Trying to hold on to things, trying to help people, that's not helping you.
Hard topic because you don't know everyone's pain and you don't know everyone's pain tolerance. Oh, just forgive. It's easier said than done. Forgiveness is such a powerful tool because it's a redeemer. Offense is such a thing, it will keep you from forgiving people. It keeps you from being forgiven from God. To not offer forgiveness to people who have hurt you, it's the very thing that the enemy desires to have. You also have to be wise in how you move forward with people after forgiveness. I'm not saying forgive and then act like it never happened. It did happen, but I'm not going to treat them as if they are forever in debt to me because they offended me or because they hurt me. Who am I? You didn't create that person, so it's not your job to hold them in that regard. If we thought about all the things that we've been forgiven of, it would lend us to be more forgiving towards others. Stop trying to forgive out of your own strength. You can't do anything about it now, but learn from it and allow God to give you wisdom on how to move forward. That's it. It is the thing that will allow you to live a free life. If we look for reasons to be offended, we'll find them all day. Take inventory. Have I forgiven everybody I need to forgive? Nobody said it was easy. It's your job to forgive.
Person that hurts you for your own soul and for your own heart, for your own nervous system. I've forgiven everybody that has ever offended me because I need to go to sleep at night. Unforgiveness is when you drink poison and expect the other person to die from it. That's unforgiveness. I'm gonna drink a glass of poison and then look at the person that I want to die and wonder why they're not dying while I die myself. Your insides are collapsing and they are eating a cheeseburger. Like they ain't even thinking about you. So you don't forgive for them, nor do you need them to ask forgiveness of you. You can do this without them.
Oh, the Lord, I just can't unsee the hurt. The Lord showed me this really beautiful picture. He said, people can only love based on how they have been loved. If that's through manipulation or pain, a misconstrued conception, or out of fear, they will in some way replicate that love. Most people are only able to love to a limit. That limit is what they have seen. Before you knew me, there was a time that you truly believed you loved someone. Even that love was limited because you had yet to come into an understanding of the way that I love. If they truly knew better, they would do better. Maybe they've yet to come into a knowing of how I love so they can replicate my love. Why do you think it's so important that you abide here, that you don't rush this place, that you sit at my feet? I do not wish that more broken love floods the earth. How can you love them back when they've hurt you? By seeing them through my eyes as my child, as someone who needs forgiveness just like you, as someone who was broken just like you were, as someone screaming out for attention just like you did, as a child who desires affection but hasn't gotten it. Someone who is doing the best they could, just like you were before intimacy with me. Picture them as adults with the heart of a child, my child. You will see them with my eyes. You will begin to have compassion because they haven't stepped into what you are now aware of with me. How can you be mad or hold hurt towards someone who has never gotten to experience what you now share with me? You can love them from afar if you have to. I've never instructed you to allow constant toxicity into your life to where it cripples you. Forgiveness was never about the other person, but about your heart becoming more like mine.
Forgiveness does not change the person that hurt you. Are you listening to me? Forgiveness doesn't change that person. Forgiveness changes you. Let's be honest for a moment. How many of you desperately desire change in your life? Forgiveness changes you. Guess what forgiveness does not do? Forgiveness does not mean you forget. One of the most crazy theories is that you forgive and forget. You don't forget, but you do have the opportunity to forgive every time you remember. There are some things in my life and there's some people in my life that every time I remember, I have to forgive them Again, forgiveness is not a one-time fix-all. Forgiveness is a daily sacrifice that I have to implement so that I can receive what it is that God has for me. If I don't put into practice forgiveness for those that have hurt me and those that have impacted me in a negative way, then I hold myself hostage to a prison that God never intended for me to stay put in.
I made a video about forgiveness and I already knew what the comments were going to be before I even posted the video. So I'm going to go ahead. This is going to be layered, but I'm going to go ahead and address a couple of things. First of all, forgiveness comes in layered. And the problem is a lot of you all are not heart motivated. You're not heart driven. You're power and control driven and power and control motivated. Okay. Ego starting to show up. A lot of you all are compensating by trying to constantly be in control of what the narrative is or what the situation or the circumstance is going to be. When you are forgiving somebody, this means that you are accepting reality for what it is. It does not mean that you are condoning what they did to you. It does not mean that you are approving of the behavior or condoning the offense or whatever the situation was. Absolutely not. Okay. This is you saying that, okay, I understand this is what my reality is and I understand how I am living in this reality. What type of position would you be in if you're constantly driven and constantly behaving out of emotional wounds? You're constantly behaving and operating out of pain and betrayal and disappointment and hurt and anger. Like that's why we say forgive, because the one thing you don't want to do is to be a helpless paralytic person in the state that you're in. Because when you're a helpless paralytic person from not forgiving, from having unforgiving heart, then you're going to compensate in different areas of your life by trying to be in control, always being power driven, not allowing things to move outside of the way that you want them to, always trying to control people's narrative and their viewpoints. And the list can go on and on and on. Sometimes you have so much vengeance in your heart that you want karma to be able to hit somebody. And that's the reason why you can't move on, because you're waiting in life for karma to hit somebody. That's one thing. I see people talk about, I'm never going to forget. You should never forget the offense, honey. You should never forget. Memories in themselves are what help you understand the growth that you've had. You should remember exactly what happened so you can be able to see the difference in a person that you were when you were offended versus the person that you are now. Also being able to see what weaknesses did I turn into strengths? What strengths did I take? What strengths did I leverage? That stuff is absolutely important. There was also a young woman who asked me, how am I supposed to forgive without an apology? That is allowing a person to have too much power over your life. If you feel as though you cannot move forward because a person has not taken the initiative action to give you an apology that is based on their time frame when they're ready. So you have to constantly be sitting in these unresolved feelings, these unresolved issues, these answers that you're constantly looking for, this quote unquote closure that's not necessarily real because closure comes from you. But you mean to tell me that you can't move on in your life unless you wait on somebody to give you simple words of an apology? You can get an apology without accountability. Start validating your own experiences. Start validating your own feelings, your own pain. What happened to me is real. I know that it's real because you did this to me and I felt this and this was the impact. That's validation. It was real. Validate your experiences. Acknowledge them as real. Accept reality for what it is and release it. Release it so you can move on in your life, so you can be happier. A lot of you all are holding so much bitterness and anger in your heart, and it's leaking into every other space in your life. It's leaking into your relationships. You're constantly snapping at your new partner. You're constantly going off. You're constantly projecting things that your last person had did to you. It's leaking into your friendships. You're so guarded. You won't be open with these people. You're always thinking somebody's out to get you, being calculated. It's leaking into your household. It's leaking into your kids. Constantly going into these states and bouts of depression. You're constantly being guarded and being overprotective with your kids. You're constantly judging. It's just so many things that can happen when you don't release. That's what I mean, honey bun. Let it go, baby. Out of all the things that I have endured in my life, baby, I practice letting it go. Okay? I realize that something has happened. And I acknowledge that you are a human, but I also acknowledge that you're not necessarily a good human. I also acknowledge that a lot of people operate from their own pains and their own frustrations and their own misunderstandings and their own misinterpretations and their own traumas and their own fears. And people do stupid things sometimes. Some people are calculated. Some people do certain things to gain power and control over another person. We understand that those people are not good for us. My forgiveness is not telling you that you can have access to me again, honey love. My forgiveness is telling you that I released this because I want happiness in my life, and I'm not about to sit here and let you control how happy I am, or let the pain that you took me through control how happy I'm going to be in my life. My forgiveness is simply me saying that, you know what, I'm laying this at the feet of God. I am taking this away from myself. I don't want to be in the driver's seat no more. Lord, I'm bringing all of this pain, this hurt, this disappointment to your feet, and I'm giving it to you. I want to lead and live a prosperous life. And I can't do it if something is constantly dangling over me. I can't let this go. I'm not about, girl, boy, honey love, my little butterfly. Absolutely not. Some of y'all need to practice saying, hey, it happened. It happened. It was painful. It hurt, baby. I know what it feels like. My biggest memory was me as a 9-year-old girl in white overalls with a multi-striped shirt and kid shoes. That's when the one thing that took me the longest to forgive happened to me. But guess what? I let it go. I released it, because if not, it was going to have too much agency over my life, and it was going to continue to control me. Having trust issues, constantly being guarded, angry, bitter, snapping, just, all right. Okay, that's my rant for today. So there you go. Sometimes in life, forgive, let it go. Bye.
Forgiving people who hurt you without keeping record of how many times you have to forgive. Even as I say that to you, some of you squirm in your chair. You squirm in the overflow because you're thinking about yourself, a season of trauma, a person who failed you, a divorce that scarred you. You're thinking about people right now you're still holding. They're in your heart like an apartment. And you're hearing Jesus says, I want you to forgive every person that hurt you, to the point that you even stop counting how often you forgive. No.
Talk forgiveness. I have so many people that come to me about this topic alone, and I practice it in real time. Let me highlight first that if it is something traumatic that you have gone through, you have to process and grieve that trauma, because forgiveness requires a level of healing to be able to do so. I wish I could tell you that a snap of the finger, you can forgive somebody in 1 second, but you got to process it. You got to process what has happened. Now, what forgiveness is not is you excusing what happened, you condoning any of the behavior, you denying that it ever happened to you, you're forgetting that it happened, or that you're reconciling with that unsafe person. Forgiveness is about releasing the hold that the offense has over you. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Recognize what happened to you was wrong. You have every right to feel how you feel. If you're angry, you have every right to be angry. If you feel betrayed, you have every right to feel betrayed. If you feel hurt, you have every right to feel hurt. And that's one of those starting points. You got to be honest with how you feel and validate your feelings and the experience that you have. The word says the Lord is close to those who are brokenhearted. You can get through it. When you let go of that resentment and that anger or that desire for revenge, a lot of peace starts to show up in your life. And when we get caught in these situations where we feel offended or betrayed or hurt or anything like that, where the perpetrator, the offender did something wrong to us, a lot of times it's hard for us to actually forgive because we're still looking for justice. We're still looking to even the playing field. We're still feeling like this is not fair. They done moved on. They done went on with their life. They're still good. This isn't fair. And so we put conditions on our forgiveness, or we're looking for some type of compensation. We make it transactional. And you know it because it sounds like, I can forgive you if you. I would forgive you, but there's that condition. And what is the condition? That's what you have to ask yourself. When we're hurt, we can't really see the humanity in people. And so because we can't see it, it's hard for us to extend any level of compassion, mercy, grace, empathy to the human side of that person. You hurt me. I can't think about the fact that maybe you had some internal struggles going on. I can't think of the fact that maybe you had your own traumas that you were dealing with. I can't think of the fact that maybe you were responding or doing something to me because you were hurt in your life and you were angry. I can't see the humanity in you when I'm realizing that you did me wrong? Yeah, but you have to start practicing it. You have to start practicing it. That's the way that you really truly forgive, is when I say, you know what? Maybe there was some internal struggles that this person had. Maybe there was some things that this person was really going through. Now, my personal practice is entrusting the offender to God. So when I'm looking for justice from somebody who did me wrong, I acknowledge the fact that the ultimate justice belongs to God. The word says, do not take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath. It's written, God will repay. God will avenge. Even if it doesn't look like the revenge that you planned out in your head. Even if you look like, well, why is their life still good? You don't know what people got going on internally. You don't know what people have going on behind closed doors. Some people know how to put up a front and make it seem like it's good, and you have no idea what's really happening. But know that that is God. Release it. Let me add, forgiveness is a journey. It's not a single event. It takes some time, baby. It's okay if you don't feel ready right away. Take small steps. Pray that God softens your heart. Oh yeah, to add, forgiveness does not mean that the pain is going to go away. That's going to take you some time. There is no part of healing that's immediate. Boom. It's just not. And although holding on to that anger and resentment feels justified, it also can keep you emotionally and spiritually tied to that person who has offended you. Child, if God only forgave us based on if we met those conditions, Lord. Go pray, baby. Let God heal you. Psalm 147:3.
You forgive a person, but you hang on to the anger, the pain, and the hurt, and you say you forgave the person, then you don't understand what forgiveness really is. Forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you.
And forgive them. You know why? Because sometimes you're not going to get that apology, and that's okay. And a lot of times forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about your own self-healing. That's it. It's about your own self-healing. And when you can get over whatever the person did without receiving an apology, because some people are just not going to own up to what they've done, and that is okay. Let them do, but don't allow that to ruin your heart for other people. Don't allow that to even harden your heart towards them. You know, pray for them, wish them well, forgive. You don't have to forget, because you're not going to forget. You're never going to forget what someone did to you, but you can always forgive them for your own heart.
Forgiveness is the heart of every strong relationship. It's not about forgetting or excusing mistakes. It's about choosing love over resentment. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the chains of anger and hurt, allowing space for healing and growth. No relationship is perfect, but forgiveness reminds us that it's okay to stumble as long as we choose to stand together. So let go of grudges, embrace understanding, and remember, forgiveness isn't just a gift to others. It's a gift to yourself and the foundation of a love that lasts.
I decided today that I would no longer tell my side of the story. I would no longer have the urge to tell my side of the story. Believe what you want to believe. I don't want to repeat old situation, try to piece things together, just try to win people over and show people that, no, it wasn't my fault, or I didn't do this, or this was for nothing. I don't care. I don't care. I'm no longer, once I give it to God, it's a done data. It's a done deal. Once it's given to God, once I say that prayer, I'm done. I'm over with it. I'm no longer going to repeat my side of the story or how I feel if it's not to God. Listen, then it turns into like gossip a little bit. You know what I'm saying? When you keep saying how you feel, what is that? Like, it's not productive. Like, yeah, I'm no longer doing that. Done.
Comes a time when we have to make peace with our past, because it's going to be hard to make destiny moves when historical pain and regret are your counselors. So you can't move forward without first booking a session with your history and your regret, because they've been the most dominant voice in your life. We have to literally make a peace treaty with our past. And what is a peace treaty? It is an agreement between two or more hostile parties which have formally ended a state of war between themselves. Our mind, our past, and our decisions are hostile towards the future version of ourselves. Yes, once we repent and confess, God forgives us, but do you forgive you? How about forgive yourself for all the times you made decisions in ignorance? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for overlooking the red flags. Forgive yourself for falling for somebody who had no intentions of catching you. Forgive yourself for not listening to wisdom's plea, because our past is supposed to be a place of reference, not our place of residence. And here's the danger: when we don't make peace with our past, we risk standing before our fights on today exhausted because we're still fighting the fights from yesterday. So this is what I do that helps me. I process the voices. The voice of guilt hands you regret due to an action. The voice of shame hands you a label due to an action. You are a horrible person. You are a failure. But the voice of conviction is God giving you a reminder that you've been made for more.
Forgiveness, it can seem, if we forgive that person, then that's us saying that what they did is now okay. And it's not okay. That's not what forgiveness means. Forgiveness can seem like, well, if I participate and I forgive, does that mean that I can't ever process this again? That's not what forgiveness means. You can keep processing, you can keep healing. And also, for a long time, I felt like a forgiveness failure because I would say that I forgave that person. And then a minute down the road or a week later, all of a sudden I would get triggered in my pain. Do you know what a trigger is? Yes, it's so complicated, right? Don't you wish we could time triggers? Like Tuesday night would be a good time for a trigger to hit. And so let's schedule it. I'll be in the bathtub. I'll be taking communion and I'll be listening to praise songs, right? And then a trigger can hit me and I will just cry it all out in the privacy of my own bathtub, right? But that's not how triggers happen. Triggers just happen in the middle of our everyday. And have you ever been hit with a trigger? You've already forgiven that person, but then a trigger hits and the pain feels so fresh and you think to yourself, I'm bitter still. I must be a forgiveness failure. You're not a forgiveness failure. Every trauma is two parts. It's fact and impact. Therefore, forgiveness can be two parts as well. We can forgive for the facts of what happened, and that satisfies the command of God to forgive. At the same time, we can also walk through the healing process of healing from the impact and forgiving for the impact. What that person did to us, it cost us something. That's the impact, and that is going to take time. I used to think that triggers were such a curse, but now I see it as God's mercy. Because if the full impact would have hit me at once, it probably would have killed me. How good of God to let the impact leak into my life over time as I'm healing. I've already forgiven for the fact, but then when an impact hits me, when a trigger hits me, and I realize an impact is nothing more than an indication there's a little more healing needed right here. There's a little more forgiveness needed right here.
Forgiveness actually can be instantaneous. I think the problem often is that we keep making forgiveness a part of the conversation with excess. Like, I can immediately say, I accept what happened for what it is. You violated, this is how I feel, and never talk to you again. I can make that decision and be mad the next day. I can make that decision and still be pressed for the next 3 months. The work that I have to do to be healthy after being transgressed has nothing to do with my ability to forgive the person. Like, I can forgive you immediately and still have a lifetime of work to do because that's how trauma works. Like, the healing doesn't come before forgiveness. Forgiveness is a decision to move forward despite whatever circumstance around you. You feel me? So when we had a conversation like, oh, how long? You talking about how long should I wait until I can be around this again? How long should I wait to feel safe around this person? That has nothing to do with forgiveness. Bro, if you have to start asking yourself, how long should I wait to be around? You shouldn't. That ain't got nothing to do with forgiving nobody.
I did a video a while back talking about letting go of family members who are toxic. And so now I want to do an update video. And this video is about the reconciliation with those family members. Some family members have earned the right for forgiveness, but that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to do that. Now, I understand that there are certain things that people can do that are unforgivable. I'm not talking about those.
I'm talking about where certain family members have changed their ways. They're a completely different person. Years have gone by. They've been trying to reconcile with you, but you may not have wanted to for whatever reason. I'm proposing to you today that maybe it is time for forgiveness. And I just want you to think about that. Because we all make mistakes, like my uncle says. That's why they put erasers on pencils. We all do things wrong, and sometimes people do deserve a second chance, if it is safe to do so. Because sometimes we can hold some of these family members to the old version of themselves while completely ignoring the new version of them that has been in front of you for years. So the question I ask you is, how long do you hold who they used to be against them when they're not that anymore? Now, I can't tell you what to do with that because this is a personal decision, but I do want to introduce you to the energy that maybe it could possibly be time to forgive them. And if it's safe to do so, reconcile a relationship with them. Because at some point in time in this life, all of us are going to need forgiveness from someone else. That means you too.
So God has really been walking me through like forgiveness. And I watched a video this morning that reminded me of something that I want to share with y'all. Forgiving a person doesn't look like harbor and resentment. Forgiving a person doesn't just look like rekindling a relationship. It actually looks like neither one of those. From the outside looking in, people may perceive it as that, but what true forgiveness is, the moment you choose to forgive somebody, you have to completely wipe the slate clean. Y'all have to re-meet each other. You know, 9 times out of 10, when you go through something where a person hurts you, you go through an extended period of time where y'all may not even speak. Just don't really look at each other the same. And that's all the more reason to wipe the slate clean. So with that being said, now you have to meet each other over again as 2 different individuals who are in 2 different places of life. That could go either which way. You might like them this time. You might not. But you can't hold the things that they did against them. But you also can't just go back to how things were, because in order to go back to how things were, you have to remember what happened. It just don't work like that. Don't allow for yourself to revisit the things that traumatize you, trying to hold on to what once made you happy. You know what I mean? You're created newly. Same way as Christians, we believe in Christ, you are a new creation. The moment that you forgive somebody, that relationship has to be created new. Whether it be a friendship, relationship, doesn't really matter. Take the time to learn each other. You know, figure out who each other are again. And if a person gets upset with you because you would rather wipe the slate clean to relearn them instead of go back to what things were, they're being manipulative. Because if you've changed, if I've changed, don't we owe it to each other to meet each other again? And if you want me to just go back to what was when I don't know who you currently are, it sounds like you don't mean me well anyway. It sounds like your intentions haven't even changed, actually. So don't be afraid to take the leap of forgiveness and wipe the slate completely clean. And don't feel bad for your new perception of a person after you re-meet them. By no means. Don't allow for people to manipulate you with condescending concepts and misleading ideas of what forgiveness looks like. You forgive. And forgiveness is a constant everyday decision. Sometimes you get reminded of what a person did and you have to make that decision in that moment. No, I forgive you. It's a process. But remember that. Trust the process. Love the process. Understand that healing takes time. You know what I'm saying? A scar doesn't heal in one day. It heals over time. It has to look ugly as a scab first, and the scab has to peel, and then the skin regrows. Sometimes that's what happens to our heart. And in that process, when you get done with that, there's new skin, new, tougher skin that's built to last. So now, you have to reintroduce yourself in your new skin and see if that person fits the new skin that you're in. Y'all be blessed.
Now, I know this message wasn't for everybody, but I know I'm talking to some people that you were one incident away from just going crazy. You were like, have you ever been there? Like, if they say one more thing to me, if I get that feeling one more time, I'm gonna go off. If he's leaving, let him go. If she don't want you, help her pack. But don't you repay evil for evil. The Bible says in Luke chapter 6 says, if you're good to those who are good to you, what praise should you get? Even sinners do that. And if you give bread to a man who gives you bread, what credit should you get? Even the unbeliever does that. Then Jesus says, but if you give bread to a person who gave you a stone, I live by this one. If you give good to somebody who gave you bad, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. Don't you forfeit what's yours to keep what's not. You're gonna have to deal with it. You got to. Look at me. Can't nobody do this for you. Can't nobody hurt for you. You gotta hurt for you.